This is Dr. Robert Watkins, orthopedic spine surgeon to professional athletes and creator of the Back Doctor app. Today's podcast is on the Deepak Chopra experience. So my wife and I, a couple weekends ago, went to Infinite Possibilities, which is a conference put on by Deepak Chopra, and it was fantastic. He had a lot of great speakers that work at his institution, and it was a great reinvigorating and inspiring conference that got you back in touch with yourself and the purpose and meaning of life. So my podcast today is basically give you the breakdown of what I got out of it, what I learned and what I relearned and what inspired me for the future. And so hopefully this will help. So there's three basic premises to the Deepak Chopra ideology and theory on life. And it closely mirrors Buddhism and Hinduism and a lot of even kind of New Age spirituality, even scientific spirituality, where I found that, Deepak is a doctor, he's a scientist, he's a rational thinker, he's in search of the discovery of reality and awareness of life and how everything works and how it all makes sense. And so he's a very smart man, and he incorporates astronomy, science, medicine, religion, theology, all these things together to come up with a rational understanding of how life works, how we process things, and how to get the most out of life. So it was a great experience. And the basic premise is there's three things that we'll look at. The first is the body, the second is the mind, and the third is the spirit. And the body, some of the basic premises are, what are some of the limitations to the human body? Like, we assume that our body and our physical reality is the totality of reality. Why do we do that? Well, because that's what we live with all day long. We bump into things, we get hot, we get cold, and that's what we experience. So we assume reality is the human body. And part of this whole process is starting to become aware and understand that there's a lot more going on in reality than just what you're experiencing in the moment. And we need to be reminded of that in different ways. Sometimes you have a great religious experience, spiritual experience, loving experience, or horrible experience, and those remind you that there's more to life than just what's in front of you. And it's not just about your ego and the day-to-day hustle and bustle you're wrapped up in. You kind of step back and you go, oh yeah, there is more to life. And that's part of this process. So what are some of the limitations of the human body? Well, first of all, our physical experience only really gets perceived and exists with our five senses. Sight, smell, taste, sound, touch. We rely on that, especially sight. We assume whatever we see is reality, and that's it, and there's nothing else beyond it. Well, that's pretty naive, because we all know there's more than just what we see. We know there's microwaves, radio waves, TV waves, ultraviolet light. There's a lot more going on in the air than what we see, but yet we fall into forgetting all this other is going on, and we fall into thinking, oh yeah, whatever I see is all there is, and that's reality. Well, no, it doesn't take much to remember, oh yeah, there's a lot more going on in the air alone that I'm not even seeing, but it obviously exists. So our perception is limited to a certain bandwidth. We only see certain frequencies of light, and that's it. Well, there's a lot more going on that we haven't even discovered, I'm sure. You pretty much assume it. We don't know anything 100% one way or the other, but you kind of go with, is this probable or improbable? Greater than 50%, less than 50%. What's the chance there's a lot more going on that we're not seeing? Well, I'm going to put it at like 99%, because we already know radio, TV, satellites, all this other stuff is going on right past our head, and we're not even seeing it. So the point is, we assume sight is reality, and it is an aspect of reality, but it's not the totality of reality. There's a lot more going on. At the very least, we got four other senses. We can hear sound, but you can't see sound. So that right there tells you there's more going on than just sight. And as far as sound goes, well, we know there's sounds that are occurring that we're not perceiving, like a dog whistle. Does the dog whistle, when they blow the whistle, the dog hears it, we don't? Well, does the dog whistle exist? Does that sound exist? Well, yeah, of course it does, even though we did not perceive it. So it's another example of how our physical world and what we perceive through our physical senses is not just the totality of reality. Okay, I'm going to tell you one more. It's touch. And this is actually the one I find the best and the most fascinating is, when you touch up against a table, here's this hard table right here, and I'm bumping up against it. We assume it's a solid figure. Well, if you've taken basic chemistry, you know it's not. It's made up of electrons and protons and neutrons, these atoms that are flying around each other in space. In fact, most of the table is empty space. The electrons flying around the protons and the neutrons. But you don't perceive the space and all the gaps in between the atoms in the table because it's so dense, it feels like it's solid to us. And the boundary of when we push on it, we think there's a clear boundary between the table and our hand, but there's not. There is no distinct, definite boundary. It's constantly moving and changing and in flux because at the very least, the electrons are flying all around it. And when you push up against it, you think it's solid and you're solid. Well, that's not either. They're both having an exchange. It's indenting your hand. You're actually indenting the table to some degree. And how crazy is that? We think of all these objects as being distinct and definite and in their own space. Well, they're not. They're moving, they're changing. We're interacting with them, and therefore even looking at them and being near them, we're changing them, which is totally crazy, but true. Basic Chemistry 101 will teach you that. And everybody who studies it goes, yeah, that's right. And so we perceive these differences in different objects and concrete definitions, but in fact, those are vague and not concrete. And in fact, Einstein said that mass equals energy, E equals mc squared. Well, what does that mean? It means that mass that you perceive as mass, it's actually energy. And all the masses around us, including us, are actually bundles of energy that are interacting with each other that don't have definite boundaries. And in fact, mainly are made up of empty space with which everything's running around in. And so the purpose of realizing some of the limitations to our five senses and the limitations to our physical world is realizing that our physical world and the way we perceive it, yes, that's an aspect of reality, but it's not the totality of reality. There are other things going on that you're not perceiving all at the same time. You can't perceive everything at the same time, so you're just picking up certain aspects. And the reason why that's so important is to realize don't get too caught up in this physical reality. If it's causing you pain and suffering or issues, well, realize you can step back, be an observer, get into your mind, get into your spirit, tap into energy that connects us all, and you're not dependent on just this physical reality because it's only one aspect of reality and it's ever changing. And it's a limited perspective. If you're caught up in a limited perspective and it's causing you pain, well, figure out how to change that perspective to broaden your horizon to get what you want out of life. Those are some of the limitations in the physical experience of the world, the limitations in how it's not perceiving the totality of reality. Second component is your mind. So you go, okay, it's not my body. How about my mind? I got these thoughts in my head. I know who I am. I know what I believe in. I experience thoughts. I know they're real. I exchange them with other people. We agree on thoughts. We disagree. Thoughts are amazing. Well, the human brain is also very finicky and misunderstood, or let me say we have a lack of understanding. We really have no idea how the brain works. Where are these thoughts stored? Where are these memories stored? When can you pull some up and not pull others up? We have no idea. And, if you analyze your brain, it's such a fascinating process. You realize, I just have one thought after another that pops into my head. I'm like a hamster on this treadmill, just running in circles, one thought after another. Oh, I should do this. I should get some coffee. I should go clean up the kitchen. I should say hello to my wife. I should tell her how much I love her. Just these random thoughts keep popping into your head, and you choose to act on some and not on others. Well, where do those thoughts come from? Think about how accountable we hold ourselves for our thoughts. Sometimes you have bad thoughts. Oh, I hate that person. I want to kill that person. I want to have sex with that person. All these random thoughts. A thought comes into your head and it's a bad thought, and you judge yourself and you feel guilty about this thought you've had, but you don't even know where the thought came from. How can you be responsible for a thought when it just popped in your head and you don't even know where it came from? Now, how you act on it, you should hold yourself accountable for that. But how do you hold yourself accountable for a thought when you don't even know where it came from? So we think of ourselves as this collection of thoughts, but then we got to step back and go, well, I don't even know where the thoughts come from. So was that me, or did I just inherit that thought? Did my mom or my dad or my best friend or my enemy tell you I was short, fat, ugly, big, small, stupid, and I've carried that thought for my whole life. I've developed this ego about these thoughts I have. This is who I think I am. And we do that as a child, as an infant, as you grow up in the world. You touch hot things, you touch cold things, you realize you want love, you don't want hatred, you don't want to get hurt, and you form judgments and opinions and stereotypes and categories as to how the world works to survive. And that's a good thing. That's what the brain is for. It organizes, processes information so you can survive, which is great. But it can also be limiting because we've got these judgments and stereotypes and categorizations in our head. Well, we don't necessarily know where they came from. Maybe we formed that judgment when we were 2 years old. Well, maybe it's time to grow beyond that. Maybe I don't have to fear everything that's warm or everything that's red because I'm not necessarily going to get burned. And then you can start to modify your stereotypes and judgments. Stereotypes, some stereotypes are good. They're good for survival. Don't talk to a tiger. Don't look a tiger in the eye. It might rip your head off. But at the same time, if you find you're limiting yourself because you're not open to people or experiences because of old past judgments you've made that are inaccurate or limiting, well, it can obviously hold you back. Judgments and stereotypes about yourself. I'm not this. Oh, I'm not any good at that. I'm not any good at sports. I'm not a risk taker. Well, you're not a risk taker if that's who you think you are, but that's just a thought in your head that has formed for some reason. You don't have to hold on to that. If it's holding you back, try something new. One of the great things about the mind and the body is they're ever changing. You can't hold on to them if you want to. They're changing all the time. You might as well embrace it. Jump into the water, embrace the change and go with it and see who you want to be tomorrow. See who you want to be right now. So if this random collection of thoughts that are running through your brain are not the totality of you, well, who is the real you? Where is the whole person? Where can I find this person they call Rob? I'm searching for him. Well, it's the observer. It's the part of you that sees the thoughts. And that's why you meditate and do yoga and relax and calm your brain and calm your body so that you can step back and see these thoughts passing through your head. Buddha, Hermann Hesse in Siddhartha, one of the great classic books, he talked about how the Buddha would sit at the river and watch the river go by. And he would watch his thoughts in his brain as though they were the water just passing by. So step back, watch the thoughts. That's how you realize I'm not just the thoughts. I can be the observer. I can be this other entity that is having the thoughts, the one who creates the thoughts, where the thoughts originate from. And so one of the great concepts from Deepak is this idea of infinite possibilities. Well, and I take that as two ways. One is you have one thought, then another thought, then another thought. Well, there's gaps between those thoughts. So I thought I'm going to go to the store, then I'm going to get some Captain Crunch, I'm going to come home and eat it. I'm not going to share it with my kids. They always eat it all. Well, there's small gaps in between those thoughts where what's your next thought going to be? Well, it's infinite possibilities to what the next thought is going to be. I'm going to go to the store. Maybe I'm going to get some Lucky Charms instead of Captain Crunch. I get anything. I buy the whole store. And so this infinite possibilities exist in between the thoughts as to what's the next thought that's going to happen. And we don't even know what it's going to be. It comes out of nowhere. Sometimes we can kind of control it. We can indulge in some. But so that infinite possibilities is really exciting because you realize, oh yeah, I can actually think anything next. And then the other part is this gap in between the thoughts. Well, that's where you realize who the real you is. That's your consciousness. That is the observer. That is your soul. That is your spirit. That is your persona. That is who you are that is generating the thoughts and who is existing in the body. That's the you. And that's the consciousness. And so becoming aware of your consciousness are these gaps in between the thoughts. So what does meditation and yoga and different religious spiritual practices do. A lot of that is calming down your body, calming down your brain, mellowing out to get into these gaps and expand the gaps. So you get these little gaps in between the thoughts. If you really mellow out, you can make the gaps bigger. And these gaps in between thoughts is the most relaxing, comforting, reinvigorating place to be. It's so peaceful. It's so quiet. You don't have to do anything. You don't have an ego. No expectations, no past, no future. It's just present. It's the Om. It's the I'm here, I'm alive, I'm breathing, I'm existing. Nothing else matters. And that's the beautiful part about life. If you can get into these gaps, it's so relaxing and invigorating. It's like the greatest vacation in the world. You don't need to fly to Hawaii. You don't need to pay to stay at the Ritz. You can do it anywhere you are in the world if you just mellow out, get in touch with it, and relax. Doesn't that sound like just the most peaceful thing in the world? Relax within yourself. Relax in between yourself, in between the thoughts. And the coolest thing in the world is you can do this on your own. All you got to do is meditate, relax, and be conscientious and intentful to get these gaps to increase and to get bigger. And ultimately, the Buddha and probably Jesus and many people who have had spiritual awakenings, they tapped into this source of eternity that exists in all of us. And ultimately, that's what it is. That's why you practice. That's why you do these things, because those gaps in your thoughts, getting out of your physical body, is how you tap into the third component, and that is your soul, and that is spirituality. You can call it energy that unites all people and beings and objects and things and planets. You can call it God. You can call it light. But there's a universal source that we all feel, we all tap into, and getting the body and the mind to relax and somewhat get out of the picture allows you to tap into this universal source. And that's what makes life worth living. That's what provides meaning. That's why you feel love and connection and compassion and care about other objects and other people, is because you feel a connection that we're the same. If we get rid of all the crap and all these ideas in our head and all this physical stuff going on, we realize we're all the same and we do care about each other. We do want to help each other. How do I know there's meaning in life and there's something beyond just this physical stuff of bumping up into each other? Well, because I care. I care. If it was just electrons and neutrons and everything else, I'd walk out in the middle of the street and get hit by a car and not care. Who cares? What do I care if my life ends now or in 5 years or in 20 years? I'm just a bunch of electrons. I don't care. Well, I do care. And because I care, that tells me there's a reason to care. There is a meaning and purpose in life. And when you relax everything else and tap into this third component of yourself, this awareness, it allows you to do that. And it allows you to do it freely and easily with energy and inspiration. And so the meditating and the yoga are basically practices that help you do that. Now, the Deepak Chopra Center recommends you do 30 minutes a day, twice a day, 30 minutes twice a day. Well, I mean, that's pretty tough. And I would love to do that. But, I'm a surgeon. I'm a dad. I got a husband. I got a bunch of friends. I got a bunch of stuff to do. I'm shooting for 15 minutes a day. And I've been doing it for the past 2 weeks. And I just lay there, and there's a great meditation called, you say your full name, your first name, and then just I am. And what it does is I am Robert Watkins IV, MD. Well, all the connotations you have about your ego and that persona and everything, what patients I have, what chapters I got to write, what athletes, all this kind of stuff. You think about all that kind of stuff. And then you just watch the thoughts go by. You're sitting there watching the river of your thoughts just pass by you. Okay, I got all that stuff. Da, 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 da. But then the second component you say is I am Rob, just your first name. And for me, Rob is a totally different person. That's a friend, and I'm a son, I'm a dad. That's what everybody calls me. I'm much happier, much more light and cheery, and always ready to have fun and exercise and whatever. But there's all those connotations around that. Who am I? Who should I be? Am I being a good enough friend? Am I being a good enough husband and dad? And so that's got its own layers of issues that you always have to deal with. So you think about that for a while, let it pass. And then the third component is I am. And you just feel yourself outside of all those words and connotations and meanings and definitions and stereotypes. It's just, you know what I am? I am this presence that is here, a ball of energy. I can breathe. I can control my body. I've got some thoughts that pass through. I'm connected to the world, to everybody else. And when you get in that space, it's such a beautiful thing because you realize you feel love and compassion and connection to everything. And in many ways, it's really just awareness that we all are the same source. We just don't always appreciate that. It's always there. It's just a question of how much you tap into it. So the whole process, we all interpret that in different ways. Some people have Christianity, some people have Islam, some people have Judaism, everything else, New Age spirituality. Some people are just scientists and don't listen to any of it. But the great thing is there's such a human connection that we all agree upon. Limitations of the body, limitations on the mind, feeling of connection to other people makes life worth living. Those are pretty basic. And the Deepak Chopra and this whole practice is just techniques and ways of understanding to get in touch with that, to make your life more rich and fulfilled. And so it's a fantastic experience. My wife, Michelle, is actually a teacher of meditation and hypnosis and Reiki, which is energy type of healing. And feel free to reach out to her. If she can be of any help, she's more than welcome to. Her email is michelle.w.watkins@gmail.com. michelle.w.watkins@gmail.com. You can email me too anytime, robertwatkinsmd@yahoo.com, and feel free to check our webpage, which is watkinsspine.com, especially if you're interested in any type of surgery or any spine-specific issues. And the best of luck to you. If we can help in any way, please feel free to reach out, and I wish you the best with everything.